We're here in Stockley Gardens in downtown Norfolk in the Giddens section of Norfolk, and we've got a swamp chestnut oak that we're going to plant. And so this is a great tree for a park environment. When you're looking at planting a tree, and the first couple steps you want to take is determining the type of tree you want, the location you have. When you're planting a shade tree such as an oak, you want to make sure you have enough overhead clearance from power lines, lights. You also want to make sure you keep it as far away from utilities. You're going to want to take into consideration a little bit the type of tree you're planting. The type of tree we have today is a containerized tree. It is in a wire basket. A lot of times trees come in containers, in gallon containerized like this, or they can come involved in burlap. So the size of the container will dictate also the size of the hole that you want to dig. You usually want to dig about 1.5 to 2 times the width of that container. An easy way to do that is you can take your shovel or any kind of other implement and measure the width of it using your hand. Right there. Use your hand as a gauge to reach down, put it there, kind of measure it out. We got about 1.5 here. We're a little bit more narrow here, so we may dig out a little bit on this side. Then when you're looking at the depth of the tree, what you really want to look at in your container stock, and you want to be aware of where you get it from a nursery, is to find what's called the root flare or the trunk flare of the tree. This right here, where a tree, naturally you see it in the woods, is going to flare out. When you plant a tree, you don't want to plant it too deep. You want to plant it at grade or slightly higher, and that can sometimes depend on your soils. But to jump right in, to keep on with the planting here, we can use the shovel again, or the implement, as your gauge. So you find that root flare, kind of gauge it out on the side. I like to use the bottom of my hand. Bring that over to your hole. Here today in Norfolk, we've had a lot of rain. We're also in a tidal area, so as you can see in the hole, we have some standing water, which isn't terribly ideal, but isn't a deal breaker here today. So we're going to add, based on how the shovel was sinking down there today, we're going to add a little bit of soil into the bottom of the hole there. What we're going to do now is we're going to want to prepare the root ball and get the tree out safely and into the hole without damaging that tree. A good way with these types of tree or containerized, if the roots are growing in heavy, is to use your shovel to loosen the roots on the side of the bag or the container. You want to pull as low and close to the root ball as possible, so you don't wrench on the tree from the top, damaging the trunk. It's always good to have some help when you're tree planting. It makes it a lot more fun too for everybody, and a lot more memorable. So get your family out there with you. On these bags that we use here at our nursery are great. With containers such as these, you may have bound roots in a ball inside your containerized tree. And what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to, if you see roots circling the tree, those later can become what we call girdling roots. So take a knife, a soil knife, an old saw or something, and go ahead and scarify those edges. And that kind of allows those roots to not become girdling and circling. It allows them to kind of go out on the edges. So then you're going to want to, it gets pretty simple from here on out. We're going to go ahead and get our tree in. Then you want to gauge it, once again, like we talked about earlier, making sure that root flare is at grade or slightly above. We're definitely at grade right now, and slightly above. It's going to, with our standing water here that we have at this particular site, it's going to settle in a little bit. So we're going to take that into consideration here today. On this tree here in particular, as I like to kind of joke, when you're planting a tree, you want to make sure you have some good supervisors. So you want to sight it up from a couple different angles. From this side, this tree has a little bit of a curve in it, so from one angle, also from another, making sure it's perpendicular to the ground as much as possible. And we're going to start and get the soil back in. You can amend in the soil in some tree plantings. Compost is not necessarily the greatest thing. You want the tree to get used to the conditions it's going to have. If you just amend this area, the roots are going to go out. Trees here, we get plenty of rain. You always want to check during drought times, but there's no particular reason to do a ton of amendment right at the beginning of the tree planting. He who plants a tree has begun to understand the meaning of life, because that person may never have the opportunity to sit under the shade of that tree. You're planting it for a new generation. Trees, of course, give us plenty of shade. They give us shade. They give us a place to recreate, such as a park like this. Also, in a city, a coastal city like Norfolk, where it's flat, and anywhere else for that matter, trees serve as stormwater infrastructure. They absorb, trees act as a kind of an upside down umbrella, and they filter water into the ground. Obviously they sequester carbon for our local area. They cut down on local, more localized air pollutants. They up property values. They serve many different purposes here. They reduce negative health consequences they found throughout communities. A multitude of items. You guys have anything else to add to that, Joey or B?
Oh, well, you covered all of that. If it were me, though, I would be taking that tag off.
Yep, we're going to get to that here right at the end. Thank you, B, for adding that in here. This is the species tag for the tree. It's Quercus moshoii. It's a swamp chestnut oak tree that we have a few of here in Norfolk. It's a great tree for a shade tree space here. It's in the white oak family, and it's going to deal really well with our soils around here, and be a great tree for growing in this area. When you're planting a tree, as an arborist, your tree should come from the nursery and not need a lot of pruning. So there's no reason in the majority of cases to do any kind of heavy pruning on that tree. You want to leave as much photosynthetic producing material, much leaf and canopy as you can for that tree to get established. So no heavy pruning back. If there's any broken, small cracked branches, that's when you could do some hand pruning and some small pruning just to get it ready and established. So the final things we want to talk about here after you get your tree planted in the ground is we've got it mostly backfilled now. Here in Norfolk on our street and park plantings, we use these corrugated pipe collars, which are great if for your yard also. If you want to use them, it prevents weed whips or trimmer damage along the trunks of the tree, which are a big deterrent to proper tree growth and can wound that tree young in its life. So I highly recommend putting one of those on. And then we're also going to want to pull tags like we talked about earlier. For the purposes of this video, we're not going to go into staking. We stake our trees. I recommend, in particular, if you have the opportunity to use wooden stakes versus metal stakes, if you're going to do it. It's really only key for shade trees. If you have a smaller ornamental tree, stakes aren't really necessary, and you don't want to stake it too tight, and you want to remove those stakes after about a year and a half at the most. It's just to get that established, make it through that first winter or that first hurricane season. I'll also double back real quick here and talk about in the mid-Atlantic area, in Virginia in particular, you want to plant trees during the winter months. It's the optimal time. They're not facing any drought stress. they've hardened off most of the time, meaning they've lost their leaves, and that's our best time, our optimal time, starting mid to late October and running through to early March at the latest. We do most of our planting here with the City of Norfolk in December, January, and February, and also some in November also. So that's what we're going for here today. We're also going to talk a little bit. Another great thing, especially if you're in a drier environment, your soils are dry, is we like to use mulch for mulching around our trees to retain moisture for those trees as we get it newly planted and established. It helps it also to not have to compete with the grass and or other shrubs in that area. So when you're mulching a tree, and this also goes for planting a tree, I wanted to touch on earlier, is we want to keep this trunk flare visible is key. So we don't want to have soil piled up around there, and we don't want to have mulch piled up around there. So we're gonna just do like about a 2 to 3 inch layer here of mulch. And you want to pull that back, like I was saying just a few moments ago, to away from the trunk. You can leave a thin layer there on the ground near the collar. Kind of spread that out in an area, and that'll help you keep your mower away if you're dealing with the turf grass situation. It is a visual reminder to you and your family, your landscaper, to stay away from that tree. This is something you've taken the time to plant today. It's something you've taken the time to spend your money on. So you want this tree to last. So those are a few of our tips here from the City of Norfolk for tree planting. And you can check us out at norfolk.gov, Parks and Forestry. Once again, my name is Stephen Traylor. I'm the City Forester here with Norfolk, and I want to thank the Norfolk Master Gardeners and Will Redfern for bringing me out for this video.